We've got a bunch of folks already in the chat, and we've got folks joining from all over, which is always the most fun. We've got folks from, let's see, Canada, Munich, Spain, New Hampshire, Belgium, Florida, Boston, Philly. You have to say it that way. New York City, Latvia, London, New Jersey, all over. It's
That's awesome.
really, really great. Sweden, Switzerland, Amsterdam, exotic Idaho. I knew it was Taylor before I looked at the name. San Francisco, Kansas City, Missouri, Warwick, UK, all over. So
All
good.
over.
Feels
Fantastic.
feels good.
And I am in sunny Arizona.
I'm in cloudy Philadelphia.
So let's
Um,
get her started.
we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. Welcome to Launch for the Win Live. Jazz hands included. Chances are you know who we are. And if you don't, and if you recently joined Launch for the Win and don't know any of the backstory, hi, I'm Amy Hoy, and this is Alex Hillman. We have been in business together under what we now call stacking the bricks since 2010, because it's better now. But back when we started, 100% of the conversation about starting a business was about starting a venture-backed startup. And it was just complete and utter bullshit everywhere. But teaching people how that they can create a product people actually want and are willing to buy, and then will spread by a word of mouth, is our passion together. But separately, we have separate businesses as well. So we run the 3500 class, and of course, Launch for the Win is a group effort. I also run a software as a service called Noco, and Alex Hillman runs a co-working community in Philly called Indie Hall.
The thing to say about Indie Hall is while it's a brick and mortar business versus the online businesses that a lot of folks are creating, among the things that are not obvious, the way that we started them is really what's similar and at the heart of everything that we teach.
Yeah. And also Indie Hall is it the oldest surviving co-working community?
Yeah, we've got a couple of different ways we could attack that superlative, but I'd like to say we're one of the first in the country, and most of my peers that started a co-working space around the same time are no longer in business, and that was even before the pandemic. The pandemic wiped
Yeah.
out a lot of my co-working dinosaur friends.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I wasn't even thinking when I asked that about the pandemic, because the way you survived it was pretty unique and they couldn't all do that.
Exactly.
So what's on today's agenda? We're going to talk about what it really looks like to launch your first paying product, the 3 most dangerous pitfalls and how to avoid them, and how to design a plan you can stick to with Launch for the Win. But why we're actually here is to make an appointment with destiny. And I know what that sounds like. I know it's terrible, but it really is. When I decided that I was going to create a profitable business so that I could stop doing the thing that I hated, consulting, it was really momentous. Even though like the work that I did at that time didn't seem that momentous, making that decision that I was going to make it happen, that I was going to do the opposite of all the things I'd done before that flopped, that really completely 100% changed my life in every way. Like all of the actions that came subsequent to that were, of course, necessary and important, but really making that resolution that I was going to do it and I was going to do what it took to make it happen is what really absolutely 100% changed my life. Like I've been running my own product business since 2008 with my husband, Thomas. And like we have an incredible life that we're able to live. And I cannot extol the virtues enough. To do that, to create that destiny, you have to get ready to make big changes. And 3, the reason Alex and I decided to do a live event is because there's something special about when you start a project. If you start by meeting people and talking to people and being in a room where other people are doing the same types of things, that is a way to harness that energy to actually lay the groundwork that you'll need to succeed. Because that energy doesn't last. Let's be honest. You'll get started, you'll get super pumped up, and then the energy will fade away because that's how it is. It's like a crush. But if you want to keep going after that point to actually succeed and hit your goals, you need to harness that energy, especially at the outset, and prepare yourself to win. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And before we get more serious, I want to tell you about two metaphors that I saw online that I thought were hilarious and perfect, that are actually really deep and insightful, that you should keep in mind throughout this workshop and also when you are working in your business. First of all, there was a post on Reddit. Hard-boiled eggs are disgusting. I almost died eating one. The crunchy soft mix is absolutely disgusting. It's like eating a ravioli covered with chips. The top response is, you're supposed to remove the shell. In case it's not clear what this person's talking about. But think about it. What if you had never seen people eating a hard-boiled egg? You'd only heard stories about people eating hard-boiled eggs. You'd maybe listen to podcasts about people eating hard-boiled eggs. Are they ever going to tell you to peel it? Like, you might never pick that up unless you literally saw somebody do it. So you might think, I know how this is supposed to go. And so you boil the egg according to the instructions, and maybe they leave out the thing where you're supposed to peel it, because a lot of recipes leave out obvious steps all the time. You would never know what you're missing. And so you would eat the egg and it would be like a horror in your mouth. And you would think, why is everyone lying to me? And the answer is, you're doing it wrong, but you had no way to know until you opened your mouth and talked about it. And then someone could correct you and save you. So I think this is actually such a good analogy to a lot of entrepreneur experience.
When I saw this slide initially, I thought that's very funny, but I don't think we've been given such a perfect comparison in quite a long time. This is really good.
I saw it and I was like, and I was like, that's actually really deep. I love shit posters. Thank you, shit posters. And sort of the similar but opposite, I follow Neil Gaiman on Blue Sky, and he had just posted about having 1,200 signed books that he signed for sale at an independent bookseller. And this author, Charlene, said, what's the secret? I signed 10 books and my hand hurt. And Neil, of course, says, I've been doing it for almost 40 years now. The secret is to sign from the shoulder, not the wrist. So here's a case where you know what you're doing. You know how to write your signature. That's normal. You go and you write your signature, you sign paperwork, it's fine. But the moment you try to level up from signing, like, I don't know, a mortgage or a letter, where you have to make like 1 to 5 signatures, and you start thinking, I'm going to sign a bunch of books, and you think, okay, I'm going to sign 10 books. Now I'm tired. That's normal. 10 books is a lot of signatures. And then you see someone who's an expert going, I just signed 1,200 fucking books. And you're like, but how?
My favorite thing about this too is, like, this advice is almost indistinguishable from somebody fucking with you, where it's like, I think he's being sincere, but
Yeah.
it's also like, it feels almost like a parody of advice. How could that possibly be it?
I mean, I don't think he's trying to be funny. I'm not saying Neil
Yeah.
Gaiman can't tell a joke. I just don't think that that's what it's not what he does. So it didn't jive with what I know about the way he posts. But yes, I could completely see that would sound ridiculous without that context. Just sign from the wrist and a sign from the shoulder, right? It's very like American Psycho kind of sounding out of context, but it's really solid advice. So if you're sitting looking at your career and going, okay, I've signed 10 books and my hand hurts, like metaphorically, right? You're like, I've written so many blog posts. How could I ever possibly write a book? I've done this much development work. How could I ever possibly make an app? Or I've made 1 sale. How could I ever possibly make 100 sales in a month? You know, you're like, the thing is that what got you here won't get you there. But if you don't know, you're like, it's impossible. Those people must be superhuman. But it isn't. They've just learned other techniques. And if you ask, sometimes they'll actually share them with you like this. So let's think about the egg. Things you don't know, have no awareness of, never seen it, never experienced. It's not in your understanding of the world. You just don't know what you don't know. And 2, you think you know how to do something, and actually the way that you're doing it now works for you, which is great, but it will not let you get to where you want to go without learning new and different skills. And in fact, going back to the basics, because I think to sign your signature from the shoulder, you'll have to practice that. Like, that'll be a little unnatural at first, maybe a lot unnatural, but it is the only way to hit that high achievement level. So these are the 2 things I want you guys to think about. Does that make sense to everybody? Oh,
I
you're
see lots of affirmation in the chat.
okay, great.
Folks comparing the classic advice for freehand sketching: use your elbows and your shoulders, not your wrist. My favorite
Yes,
quote from Original Rhombus is: "There is a whole world inside the quote sign from the shoulder, not the wrist." So yes, this is
there is.
these are these quotes, these metaphors are absolutely landing.
Fantastic. When I was working on this, I'm like, I wonder if anyone else will agree that these are good. But I'm glad you all agree. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed when you sit down to start your Launch for the Win project, that's absolutely 100% normal. I do want to say that your feelings are telling you to change something when you feel overwhelmed. They're not telling you you can't do it. They're not telling you to stop doing it. They're not telling you you're not able to do it. They're telling you that you need something else to get rid of the feeling of overwhelm, not that you are actually going to be overwhelmed. It is essentially a messaging system. It's a little alert blinking on your control board that says you need to check some systems. That's all. It doesn't mean you can't do it. And this is also going to be a theme throughout the rest of the day. So, with that very philosophical, what is the sound of one hand clapping a signature onto a book, metaphorical discussion, let's look at some actual tiny products. Because I think the tiny products, when we talk about tiny products, people don't know what they are because, like eating the eggs without the eggshells, you just haven't noticed them. You haven't seen them. They're not a part of your world. So, this is the first functional landing page for my app, Noco, which used to be called Freckle. Long story. And I mean, I'm a designer, so it's not as simple as it could have been. I went back to the actual very first entry in the archive, and it was literally just text in like Times New Roman with an email sign up box. It was just a few lines. It's like, your time has value. You need to spend your time doing your work, not tracking your work. Would you like to try an app that actually respects that fact? Sign up below. And that's how we launched it. So when we launched Noco, which is a time tracking tool, I think from the screenshot, it looks pretty complete. And it was absolutely 100% not. You could really enter time very fast. You could tag it, and we had reporting, but we did not have so many other things, including password reset. We didn't have any kind of download or export or import. We didn't have any kind of permissions of any kind. We didn't have invoicing. We didn't have a timer. All these other things people say are absolutely required features. And it didn't matter because we really nailed the one or two things that really make the product special, which is how fast it is to enter your time and how fast and easy it is to report on your time, to learn what you're doing. That was it. People tolerated a lot of cruft and bugs because those things worked really well. So this was the work of about 1 day a week for 3 months. And also we did a week-long retreat also, and then we launched it. So we developed it for what is an extremely brief period of time for a software as a service. It still is pretty full featured compared to some of the other tiny products I'll show you. So this app made us in our first month $1,500 after our first 30-day billing. So we started at 1,500 MRR and have gone from there. And it was all because we exercised discipline and shipped something small to make sure people wanted it and prepared them for it and asked them to sign up and give us money once we were ready to launch. We're going to start with examples from our businesses first, and then I'm going to go into other people's businesses, students and others. This is every time zone. This is a time zone visualizing tool that I designed and that my husband initially built back in 2010. When we launched it, it did nothing but have these sliders that show the time across multiple time zones. There wasn't any customization or any other features, but we got to about 500,000 plus visits a month with that. And it took like 3 days. And it wasn't a product in the sense that people could pay for it, but it will become a product people can pay for. And I actually hired a developer to build out a super simple feature set for people who have remote teams. And so far, without any promotional effort and like no emails to get people to sign up, nothing, it's made like 25 grand in the past 2 years. And I literally paid this developer to do this as a project to see if we wanted to hire him. So It was a very small, minor effort comparatively, other than the fact that time zones suck. But like we launched the initial version in literally 3 days. And I think that that is the key to remember here. And we turned it into money later. And if we put more effort into it, it would make more money. Indie Hall is a co-working community. I said community, not a co-working space. Alex started Indie Hall by having meetups at a local restaurant rather than anything that resembles what you would think of when you think of co-working. And that's why Indie Hall has survived this long. So it was like over a year before you went from the meetups to the first really tiny space, right, Alex?
Yeah, and even before that, we weren't even running our own events. We were borrowing other people's. It was just finding people who felt disconnected from the place that they were and the places they were going and saying, if going to an event and feeling like you're the only one who doesn't belong, what if a group of us goes together? And so the tiniest product for us wasn't even our own event. It was just a little bit of organization to bring together people that I had met and we had met at other events to say, why don't we go to this together? And eventually that gave us enough momentum to do some of our own events. And eventually we didn't even approach looking for a space until people were actually asking for a way to be together more often and more conveniently.
And that's why you have survived all these years where others have failed. So I especially want you guys to pay attention to this because it may not seem immediately relevant to you if you want to build a software as a service or write books or build even a paid community online or anything like that. But the key here is that when everyone talks about co-working, they always say co-working space. They focus on the real estate. Real estate's really expensive. It's like all these liabilities. It's a challenge, but that's where people want to start when they think they want to work together with their other independent friends. They start at literally the worst part, most difficult and dangerous thing, and that kills them either before or after they get a space.
It's almost the perfect connection to the egg analogy, in that most people have only ever seen the end result of a co-working space. They've seen sort of the physical embodiment of it, but we don't walk around showing them the desks and the furniture. We talk about what it's like to be at home by themselves. And the line that
Yep.
if it connects hard, is a lot of folks finally realize that working from home is convenient. But after a little while, if you haven't talked to another adult, all you've talked to is your cat or the person at the grocery store or the delivery person. You start going a little bit crazy, and the people chuckle and they go, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And that instantly reframes it for them from a place where I go rent a desk to a place where I go to change my scenery on purpose.
Yes. So you have to really look at other successful businesses that start in a way that's reachable for you, which is why I want to show you all these examples of different types of products, communities, etc., that started really, 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 really small in a way that's achievable. Because like maybe if you sit down and you start, you're overwhelmed. It's because you're looking and copying the wrong one. All right. Look at this super professional, slick landing page, guys. This is the current page. I've gone back to Web Archive for a lot of the other stuff, but this is what's up there right now. And it's so bad. It's so bad. And yet we sold 10,000 copies of this book. When you hit what people really need and you sell it to them in a way that they really want to be sold, you can have a shit landing page that looks like something you exported from Word and people will still buy it with some caveats, right? But my book, Just Fucking Ship, you may or may not have read it. I would love to know how many people have read it. It started as a 24-hour product challenge. Nathan Barry announced a 24-hour product challenge like 1 week on a Friday. And I decided, hey, you know what? I was like, I'll do it. I'm just crazy like that. So I took a few of these blog posts I had written on this private blog about my thoughts on shipping, and I reread them and I made a list of what I consider the 21 principles of just fucking shipping from all the things that I've learned from going from being an absolute inveterate procrastinator to someone who ships stuff all the time. And I turned it into a book. And what I did was I wrote as much as I could in 24 hours, but I took breaks to eat and sleep. Like I was never a young startup bro. And I live blogged it on the Stacking the Bricks site. and sold like hundreds of copies straight out the gate. And it was in no finished form. It was like maybe 40% there and unedited. And so I just kept finishing it over the next couple months. And it really hasn't changed much since then. I want to do an edition two, but health has gotten in the way. But this book still keeps selling because it's still good. People still need it. People still want it. And it still speaks to them.
Amy, a bunch of folks are saying in the chat that they've read the book, they love it, love the Thanksgiving dinner metaphor, love the vintage web look as well.
But it's not even good vintage web, but thank you. You guys want to hear something funny that you love the Thanksgiving metaphor? I'm so glad because I tried to hire an editor who came with great recommendations to make the next version. I was thinking at the time that I might try to sell it to a publishing house. And the number one piece of advice he had was to get rid of the Thanksgiving dinner metaphor. And I was like, this is just not going to work for us. Like everyone loves that. Like that is the thing people always write about when they write in about it. They talk about it because it makes sense. And that just goes to show that you can't always trust experts, especially not like consultant type experts.
Especially when those are not actually plugged into your audience.
Yes. Yes. He was not tuned in to our audience and he was not on the receiving end of the emails from people. So he wasn't persuaded by me saying that either. So whatever, moved on. So here's a product that I think nobody knows about. This one's old. The website's not there anymore. This is my husband's mini product, Retinify Me. It's cool how the title is nowhere on the page in the screenshot. So back when retina screens came out, you guys remember that? This is ancient history. No one knew how to make retina graphics. My husband figured out a way to do it. And then he borrowed from me and made a cheat sheet that was a flow chart of how to retinify your graphics. And it was downloaded like almost 1 million times. And when he told me that, I was like, make something you can charge money for related to your cheat sheet. So he made a book, right? It's a 50-page PDF. And it was really tight, going through all the steps in the workflow so that people who needed more information and wanted more information could have it. And I mean, we sold tens of thousands of dollars worth of this 50-page book. It was really a report. And the fun thing is, early on when we started selling it, people complained that it was short. And so I changed the sales copy to say, no fluff, super short, everything you need, nothing you don't. You'll be ready and informed to solve all your retina problems in like 30 minutes. No more complaints. And that's what comes from understanding your audience better than they understand themselves. Like their feedback is important. It's important to hear that feedback. I heard the feedback, but I rejected the premise, right? They're like, when someone complains that a product is too X or too Y, sometimes it really is. But a lot of times what they're telling you is, I was surprised and I'm a little angry person who doesn't like being surprised. So what you can do is remove the surprise rather than change the product. So much of angry feedback is, you changed something, or I didn't expect that. And then they like give you a much more specific reason rather than just expressing what they actually felt. And that's why Safari is also really good, and understanding your audience is really good, more so than just doing it like interviews, for example.
This book, The Tiny MBA, is a bright spot for me in the year of 2020. Many of us are going through various different kinds of tough times. This book, however, didn't even start as a book. Similar to Amy's JFS being the result of a challenge, I participated in a challenge as well that happened on Twitter, where the task was to share a thing that you know deeply or have strong opinions about, like the first tweet, and we'll give one reply for every like up to 100. And I chose business, specifically the category of business that we know and we share, and use it as an opportunity to just rack my brain and pull together all the things that I've said hundreds or thousands of times, as well as the things that I wish people either asked about or thought about before they came to me with the problems, or the preventative stuff. And that Twitter thread, A, was a whole hell of a lot easier to write than a book, and B, it took off like wildfire, and it kept getting shared and replies, and people adding more context and story, and how my little 1 or 2 sentence tweet length post connected to them in some example or some experience they had, or they wish they'd heard this. I heard people say this Twitter thread is more valuable than any business book that I've read. Obviously, take things like that with a grain of salt, but the response was honestly unlike anything I'd ever created, and decided a few months later, when those quote tweets and shares and replies were still happening, maybe I should do something with this. And sat down with a friend who had designed another print publication with me, a zine, and said, hey, I got kind of a wacky idea to turn a Twitter thread into a book. We want to figure this out together. And over the course of a couple of months, came up with the design and the text that is in the book, the few that are lightly cleaned up, but they are almost verbatim, not just the contents, but also the order that I originally published them in. And what was interesting, to tie this back to the example of framing and how people don't like being surprised, I said, I think this is going to land really well with people who already know us, know me, know our body of work, know this context. I want to make sure it's going to land with the folks who don't. And so I specifically put out a call to people spread beyond our network and our community and our email list to say, hey, I'm looking for a couple of dozen readers who are interested in starting a business of their own. And while people liked it universally, the most common response that I got from folks who did not know us was that they were surprised, once they got past the forward, that it was just a couple of sentences per page. And when we talked it through, they liked the sentences themselves, but they saw a book and therefore they expected a book. And so we sat down and I said, how do I solve that problem of preparing them for that first lesson being 2 sentences on a page? And I actually took up a page out of Hannah Gadsby's second comedy special, where she spends the first 15 minutes of the comedy special describing the comedy special beat for beat and says, here's what you're going to do. Here's the jokes I'm going to tell in this order. So you can't be mad. You can't be surprised, because she got a lot of flack for her first comedy special being quote unquote not comedy. And I was like, what a great way to diffuse this situation where you tell people exactly what they're going to get. And therefore they, at that point, they can't be, they can still be mad. And I lifted that idea and I wrote an entirely new introduction that encouraged people to approach this book differently than they would another book. And not only did all of those comments go away, those test readers read it like, oh, this gives me a clearer picture of how you want me to use these ideas. So sometimes in something being smaller than people are used to receiving or experiencing, similar to co-working, a little bit of framing helps go from, well, that's different and weird and I'm surprised in a negative way, to that's delightful and intentional and it feels like you're looking after me, and that's
Yep.
actually better than what I would have asked for.
Yes. People just literally need to be prepared. And some will still not like it, and that's fine. But you have to listen to the feeling people are conveying and not the actual facts they're conveying when you get feedback. Unless it's expert feedback, which then expertise is not universal. But yeah, people have feelings and then they post hoc justify them. Now that's a scientific fact. And we all do it, which we're going to talk about later. But also, Alex, you made a physical copy of this book, which makes it stand out among the other products that we're talking about today. And I know you could go on for literally an entire hour, at least, about that process. So I'm not going to let you talk about it. But but I wanted to put out there, guys, that this is also a physical book. Like, you can buy the ebook only, but people love the physical book. You can make a tiny physical book in a way that works. But there's a lot of ways to make a tiny product. And tiny product doesn't mean lesser. It means different. If you play it right, it's a strength, but you have to do it intentionally. You can't just make a half-assed tiny thing and then say, but it's brief. Like it has to fit the form. And so it's like when we talk about choose your difficulty setting in Just Fucking Ship. And also it's mentioned in the Launch for the Win process, like you have to have a tiny goal to create a tiny product that's complete and feels like a tiny perfect thing rather than a half-assed whatever. Speaking of tiny products, okay, a lot of tiny ebooks out there, guys. These are 2 from students. So the positioning manual has completely changed Philip Morgan's career. He built that after doing The Year of Hustle, which was the predecessor to Launch for the Win. And it's completely changed his career, 100%. Tiny book, all about positioning for independent consultants, of which he was one. And it's just totally changed his business. It's only $9, but it gets people into his funnel for selling more consulting. It just works really well. And of course, you guys all know Brennan Dunn, right? He's not as visible these days, but Brennan created a tiny, tiny book called Double Your Freelancing Rate in 14 Days. This is from 2012. Basically, I challenged him to do it because he wanted to come with us on a trip and he didn't want to spend the funds from his family's funds because he has kids. So I was like, can you make the $5,000? I bet you can make $5,000 at a time to book the trip. And so he, with that challenge, he buckled down and turned it into a very, very little book that's has spawned a complete empire. So Double Your Freelancing is like a much bigger thing now. It's made him many hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years from this tiny little book that he produced in a few weeks. Again, with a very simple landing page. You can also do tiny products that are not tiny-ish SaaS or books or educational businesses or events. Onsef, one of our alumni, created Ruby on Mac, which is a script or multiple tiers of script. Like you download it, you pay money, you download the code at the level that you paid for, and then it fixes you up with Ruby on your Mac because getting it started is a pain in the ass. It's way harder than it should be, but a majority of Rubyists use Mac and it's people complain about it all the time because it's terrible. So he wrote a tutorial first and that tutorial is really super popular. And so he turned it into a script, which he charged for, and it's done very well for him.
I think the first version of this he sold for $7 or $9 or something along those lines for one specific kind of developer. I think it was Android developers who were using Ruby tools, but they were Android developers. So they don't want to mess around with Ruby. They just needed it to work. And that took off like wildfire. So he's built a pretty significant business on top of this. But the very first version that he actually charged for was less than $10 and an automated version of one part of a very large tutorial.
I just love this story because when we started, the common knowledge that everyone knew is you can't sell things to developers. You cannot sell things to developers. Everyone said it. You would tell people about the product you were building and they're like, developers won't buy that. It's like, have you looked at all the stuff that developers bought? They buy IDEs, they buy books, they buy workshops. Like even then it was never true, but everyone knew it. Everyone was just crunching down on that crunchy egg. So I especially love this example. So this is the beginning of Egghead. Egghead is a subscription screencast service with really great, beautifully designed and highly targeted tutorial videos for developers, especially around the JavaScript world. And they became a quite large business. So it started with one guy being mad, John being mad at the quality of tutorials out there and just posting a video on super tiny little, very, very focused little things. And he would just post the videos and post the videos. And I'm not sure when exactly he and Joel hooked up. I should really get the full story, but he started it with a place to put an ad and a place to donate. And Joel convinced him to start selling it in like a super simple way, just putting it in a zip file and selling it for $50 and combined on the list of people who had already donated to John and the email list that Joel was building, just blogging about dev stuff. They made $6,000 in the first week, which gave them a budget to start with. And then it became a like multi-million-dollar a year subscription business. Here's another SaaS version, something that I used when it was extremely, extremely simple. Back in the day, they later grew very large and then sold to Marketo. Tout was a tool to send templatized yet personalized emails to people for whatever purpose, but especially customers, bloggers. Like if I were going to try to get myself on a lot of podcasts, like this is the type of tool I would have used. So it wasn't bulk automated sending. It wasn't bulk mail merge. It was just manually sending an email that you tweaked a little bit each time to people, and that's all it did. It was really simple. I think it used your own Gmail account to send the emails. Like, it was so lightweight. It was so lightweight, and founder TK went really, really far with it and managed to then sell it. So there's so many ways to approach tiny product. Now, here's another business I don't know a ton about, but Easlow is, I believe, his name as a person. And this is one of his earlier pages. In the end of 2021, he started to sell Notion templates, but he had only a few to start with. And now he has this huge library, and like a lot of them are really fancy templates. And he has posted that over the past 2 years, he has sold $500,000 worth of Notion templates. He's always on it. Like, he's on the marketing game, but that's a lot of money on Notion templates. Like, there's so many types of tiny products you can make. The goal is to start really small, but tiny doesn't have to equal info product. You can make all kinds of things tiny. Basically, anything that's worth having, you can make tiny. And when you do that, you create success for yourself in the future. Like, so what if your tiny product is not the thing that like completely changes your life financially? What if you can't retire off your tiny product? What if you can't build on your tiny product and make like a giant product? It doesn't matter, because you will have built capital, not only financial, but business capital, in the sense that you'll know how to sell things. You'll have people who trust you. You'll have learned so much from the people who bought the product, right? Like, I'm not going to create the Just Fucking Ship universe, but it doesn't matter, because people who read Just Fucking Ship know that my advice is good and are the more likely to buy other products that I made. So I want you to think about, when you make a tiny product, you are doing so much more than like failing to make a big product. You're not creating a lesser thing. You're not creating an inferior thing. You're not creating a single feature of something that has to become a large product. I mean, you can do that with software as a service. You absolutely can. A single feature app, totally a valuable thing that you can then grow if you want to. But you don't have to do it that way. If you can make sales, if you can make $1,000 in sales, if you can make $5,000 in sales, you can make $10,000 in sales, you will have completely changed your life, because you will have learned skills to make that possible, and you can do it again, whether or not you go in the same direction as the first tiny product you made. Like, you can change direction, but it doesn't mean what you did before was useless. It means that it got you to the point where you could do that. Think of boiling, you're the frog, turn up the heat. All right. So, launch for the win process. We're actually not going to spend a lot of time on the process, because I think that the cheat sheet is quite explanatory. And then, of course, there's the like 40,000 words of the email course and booklet that you can get for free, which really goes into a lot of detail. But I want you to look at the big picture here. The process of launch for the win goes like this. First, you pick your customer. Then you figure out what your customers need and want. What do they share? What do they complain about? What do they think about? And you're going to use this with data rather than pulling the answers from inside yourself. Then you're going to figure out, where does their pain and your skills intersect? How can you help them? It might be a Notion template. Maybe their problems are really organizational problems. Maybe their problems are installation problems. Maybe they don't know how to arrange their work in such a way that they can build a project on the side. Maybe you can break it down for them with a metaphor that makes something that seems really scary accessible, like Thanksgiving dinner. You can say, all right, you're going to teach them something. You're going to change their mindset. You're going to help them complete a task they didn't know how to complete. You're going to complete it for them. You're going to have something that'll fix their mistakes. Like, there's so many different ways. You're going to look at the method. Are you going to educate them, connect them, do it for them, help them outsource it? Like, what way will you then deliver the solution that only you can do, that intersects with their pain? And then finally, how will you actually make the product itself, and then execute on the list of things that you need to make to actually just do your launch? So if you've gone through the email course, then you'll know that we need to start at the end. I think the very first thing everyone should do is look at the calendar and see, these are not necessarily individually sequential weeks where you have to work straight on through 12 weeks, but just any chunk of time. You're going to have to put up a landing page. You're going to have to start the product. You're going to have to share the page. You're going to write a welcome email that asks the questions. That are, like, we've really laid it out for you in a way that is really very specific, and you can just follow this along. And then Free your mind up to think of, well, what are you going to put in the email? Something you read about. What type part of the product you're going to make? Well, you need to have designed that. And here we go through all of the things that you need in order to actually launch the product. So if you've read Just Fucking Ship, you know about backwards planning. You know why this is actually the first part of the cheat sheet, is that you have to look at all the things that you require to do the thing that you want, which is to launch the sales. So you have to have some subscribers, you have to have, and to get subscribers, you have to have some content. To have some content, you need to have data and insight. You need to have written the content, of course, but you need to understand what the content should be, what you get from the data and insight, and so on and so forth. Like, it all flows backwards. And we put the last thing at the top, and you can basically follow it down to the root, which is the data. So the things I wanted to talk to you about today about the audience are tips that are based on mistakes that we see people make all the time that I wasn't able to fit into the cheat sheet itself. Anybody here a Pratchett fan? So Terry Pratchett in his Witches series said that witches have first sight and second thoughts rather than the third eye. So first sight is seeing what's really there, and second thoughts is watching what you're thinking and thinking about what you're thinking. Seeing what's really there is actually really hard. When we teach people Safari, they will look at the Safari examples that we specifically selected for them to work on. And a lot of times there'll be multiple people in the class who are like, I don't see any pain. It's just them talking about X. They're talking about the problems with X. That is the point. That is the pain. Because when you're in your professional mode, when you're in reader mode, when you're in hunting for solutions to your own problems, you dismiss all this stuff because to you it's irrelevant, because to you already know the answer. It's just people kvetching about installing Ruby, and installing Ruby is really hard, so you're just going to ignore it. It has nothing to do with you. You went through it, whatever. It's not relevant to you. You have to undo that. You have to undo that mindset, and you have to see what's really there. You have to try to create a beginner's mind and read the words on the page and listen to people on the podcasts and videos. What are the actual things they're actually talking about, rather than immediately categorizing that as, okay, that's not for me, I can ignore it. Because what you're doing is, what you're trying to do is to find things that other people don't pay attention to. It doesn't have to be a unique problem that no one's ever thought about. That's not necessary. But few people will ever give sustained intellectual attention to other people's problems. And that is what makes the difference. Because if you can solve someone's problem that they really care about, you can make money no matter how many other mistakes you make. So don't get fancy, go with what and who you know. But you have to cultivate that beginner's mind and not write off or gloss over or memory hole the stuff that you read. Focus on professionals, like business to business, people who have a value mindset, not exclusively wannabes and consumers, B2C. So something to think about is that in every industry, there's a lot of beginner content. And there's usually quite a bit of true expert content, but there's often a complete missing middle. So something to keep in mind. Pretend you're an ethnographer learning about a new culture. Read what's really there and take note of what you see. Yes, this is really hard. No, you can't skip it or automate it. No, you cannot just pull the answers from your mind, because you were not in the mindset then when you were hanging out in the chat rooms or going to meetups or reading forums. You were laser focused on your wants, your needs, and your goals, which is fine. That's normal. But you need to focus on other people, and you need to go back and load it into your brain. You cannot ask Chat GPT. You cannot script it, because the thing is, the magic happens in your brain, and there's no substitute for that. You are essentially loading up an empathy module in your own brain, and anything other than doing the work yourself will defeat the point. And more importantly, you'll be doing something that literally anyone else could show up and do. If you can get the answers from ChatGPT, well, so can everybody else. You would be literally just doing the same thing as hundreds, thousands of other people, no insight. And just a reminder, you do not need $1 million idea. You do not need $1 million research. You only need to make a few $1,000s. You only need to solve 1 or 2 pains well. You just need to aim smaller. We hear from a lot of folks that they don't know when to stop safaring, when they don't know what's enough. And the thing is, you will not feel like there's enough, because you'll never feel like there's enough. Because 1, safari never ends, but 2, also, you have no way to know what's enough. So you're just going to have to say, okay, I think I can make something with this and stop and move on so that you can actually create a product. Like that's just what you have to do is you have to take a little leap of faith and stop at some point. So then of course, insight, you look where you want to find your angle. And that is, I think, words I should have put in the cheat sheet. You want to find your angle where you can do something that's different enough to spend money on. You don't have to be completely unique, and that's not the problem, but you have to find the crossover of pains that your audience has and things that you are good at and like to do. And again, you do not need $1 million idea.
One of the things that we were just talking about in the chat that I wanted to bring up here is
Yep.
Alistair had said something to the effects of this theme's largely about calibrating your intuitions about potential customers. And I said, that's right, but it's a balance. There's a balance between understanding those potential customers and doing something with that understanding. Because a lot of folks get sort of trapped in a place or stuck in a place where they're trying
Yeah.
to understand everything before they put anything into action. And I
Yes.
think the reason for tiny products, and that could be as tiny as a blog post or a screen recording or a tweet, even that demonstrates to folks that you understand their problem perhaps as well or better than they do, is a critical piece of that feedback loop. If all you're doing is understanding and you're not putting any of that understanding back out into the world, people can't
Yes.
feel understood. And just as important as for you to understand them is for them to believe and see that you have earned that understanding and that you're
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. 100%. Because that's the make a date with destiny kind of thing. Like if you just make a date with research, you're not going to change your life. And I love pure research more than almost anybody. There's nothing I love more than just diving into stuff for no reason. Like I've safaried the ice chewing forum. It was really interesting and pointless, but I enjoyed it. And that's fine because I had it for enjoyment and wasn't doing anything with it. But when you want to create a product, at some point you have to stick a pin in it. You're like, I'm going to move forward and you're not going to feel ready and it's not going to feel like enough. And that is normal. So now we're talking about the method. How will you help them? Mindset, knowledge, facts. Will you help them up level their actual skills or just teach them about something? Will you help them implement it? We help them execute it. We help them process it. Will you create templates for them or a tool? Like all products fall essentially into one of these. So you think, all right, mindset, double your freelancing rate, and the positioning manual or mindsets. Tiny MBA is a mindset book, but it's also about other things, just like those are. Just Like You Ship is a mindset book as well as implementation and process. The Ruby for Mac script is a tool which follows a process that Monsef created, and so on and so forth. Like a lot of them are mixes. And again, you want to pay attention to what types of things they use, like and need and want, but also what you would enjoy making. A lot of people are like, I want to make a tiny product, but I don't want to write a book. It's like, so don't teach then. If you don't like to teach, don't teach. And if you don't like writing a book, don't write a book, create something else. There's so many ways to package these methods for how you'll help them into formats. Again, the goal is to finish it in 12 weeks ish or 12 units, however you break that up, and something that you're going to enjoy making and that something that your audience consumes. Like don't try to sell software to people who don't use software. Sounds simple, but you'd be surprised how many times we've seen that mistake. When you want to build a SaaS, everything looks like a SaaS buyer. So once you go through this process, and you need to go through it at a good clip. Like it doesn't have to be fast, but you need to be consistently moving through the steps because otherwise you will never finish. You have to make a decision that you're going to do it, put up the landing page first, then create the content, then create the product. And it's time to really do it to make it possible for you to do the work. You got to package up that energy. You got to sustain that energy through the process and then use it to produce the parts. And the parts are not always exciting. So that leads us to 3 pitfalls. I wanted to tell you about predictable failure because Alex and I have seen it all. And the thing about failure is it's never interesting. It's always the same things. Isn't that right, Alex? Like, can you think of any truly exciting failures we've ever seen?
Boy, would I love to see one.
You're like, Please give me something interesting to talk about. It's always the same stuff. There are really three types of failures. We'll talk about the pitfalls, but first, the type of failure, not doing anything. This is literally the most common. More businesses die at this stage than any other. Like they were never pulled into existence, or you started a little bit and then you just gave up. So like this is really the number one hurdle that you have to get over. Two, doing the wrong thing. So you've got energy, you've got motive force, you're working on stuff. You're going to launch something, but it's the wrong thing. And launch for the win will prevent this. It is extremely stressful and depressing to launch a product that nobody wants. But on the upside, it shows that you can carry through and package something and finish it, which is fantastic. And you can then fix the thing that didn't work by following launch for the win, by doing Safari, by working very hard to do a nice small thing rather than working forever on a project that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and never sees the light of day. And three is you do the right things actually, but not enough. You don't do them consistently enough. You don't finish them. You may complete your entire product and all of the emails and then hesitate to launch it and then just never launch it. I have seen this so many times and it makes me want to throttle people. I understand the impulse, I do. But it's like, you're so close. Or people who launch a successful product and it goes like wildly successful out of their imagination. And then they're like, okay, well, I'm not going to do anything else because it'll never be that good again. All right. So seriously, I hate this fucking meme. I hate it. It's so bad. But truly, it does reflect a universal truth. I hate to admit it. It's this is so real. We have seen this so many times where someone will be doing all the right things and going along, and then at some point they'll just freeze and stop, or they'll actively sabotage themselves. And it's heartbreaking for me. But this is what you have to watch out for. You have to watch out for the pitfalls that cause someone to do not enough. So you're doing the right things, but not enough. You don't finish, you don't ship, you don't price your product, you don't grow the thing that's actually making money. You decide, I had a successful launch, so I'm going to do something completely different next time. No, don't do that. Your three pitfalls are looking inwards for answers and not outwards to the world around you. So you're trying to ask yourself, what kind of product should I make? And you're asking you rather than the world. This is a big mistake. Or what should I do with this problem? What should I do with that problem? It's like you're trying to trust your gut, but your gut's not educated. And this causes a lot of issues. The second pitfall is riding too high and then the inevitable Uno reverse. I feel very cool that I put the Uno reverse meme in here. You can add your applause to the chat room. Thank you. And the third one is wildly unrealistic expectations. So let's talk about them. Looking inwards, not outwards, means asking your feelings to tell you what to do. Did your feelings go to business school? Have your feelings sold any products? Do your feelings buy products? I mean, yes, your feelings do buy products indirectly, but your feelings don't have answers to business questions. I hate podcasts. I hate podcasts so much, but everyone loves our podcast. I don't hate doing them. I've just been too ill. Everyone loves our podcast. Me, I listen to it and I'm like, not because it's bad, but because I hate podcasts. So Alex is like, you're a freak, Amy. Just accept it. Let's do the podcast. And I had to admit, he's right. So your feelings are not a test for reality, for what your audience will buy, what your audience will want, what struggles your audience has. You don't know. That's what Safari is for. And of course, listening to the self-talk instead of seeking data. The voice inside that says, no one's going to buy this. Who do you think you are? You aren't enough of an expert. They're going to laugh at you. Like, no one will look at it. It's going to be horrible, etc. That voice always is not a business person. Instead, you should be seeking data from the actual world about what actual people have actually done that has actually worked or not, and using that to inform. Don't act like someone who just arrived on this planet from a faraway galaxy, and don't just look at an egg and just pop the egg in your mouth. Don't go like, huh, what should I do with this? You look for people who've been doing it and learn from reality. Riding too high on the Uno reverse is something that is extra painful for me to both watch and experience. I don't think I have it as bad as some people or most people, but it still happens to me, which is why you cannot trust it. When you are wildly overconfident and just filled with all this energy, you're like, this is going to be amazing. Everyone's going to buy it. This is going to change my life. I'm going to become a millionaire. I'm going to sell it to Yahoo. If anyone caught that. Followed by the inevitable crash. Inevitable, because the confidence is based on nothing. And so, of course, it will deflate. Also, when you're super motivated, you're like, I'm going to get all this work done. This is going to be a blast. I'm going to finish this in a week. I'm going to get it done so fast. I'm going to get it done way faster than Amy says I can. And then something happens and you can't. And then you're like, nope, I'm never going to get it done. I don't have any way to finish this. There's no way. It's impossible. It's too big. I don't have time. This happens a lot, this whiplash. Basically, it's the I'm the best or my product is the best, and then I'm the worst or my product is the worst. This cycle will kill your product chances. And so will wild and unrealistic expectations. So expecting unrealistic outcomes like making millions of dollars from your first product, it happens. It does. But don't expect it. You have to have an expectation that is sized correctly so that you feel good when you hit it, rather than you have a completely unrealistic expectation and you don't hit it while actually being successful and you feel bad. Like, I've seen so many people have great success, to my mind, to anyone's mind, with their first product or the second product, and yet they feel bad because it's not as successful as they thought. So it's like, oh, you got a pony for your birthday instead of a horse? So sad. You have a pony though. Ponies are great. Or even expecting realistic outcomes like building your own business where you can quit your job and work completely in your business with a nice short work day, etc., but on unrealistic timelines. Doing that by yourself on the side of consulting or a job takes time. And actually quitting your job to do it doesn't necessarily make it go faster, because a lot of what makes the success happen is word of mouth spreading among people and percolating through communities, people reading or watching or listening or whatever your content, using your scripts, etc., building trust with you. And that takes time. You cannot actually make that faster by any way that is sustainable. So you just have to be like, all right, what's a realistic expectation in what realistic time frame? So before I launched my first technical book, which I didn't put in here because it was actually not a tiny product, and I learned my lesson. It was big. And my friend Eric asked, how many copies would you be happy with if you sold this when you launched the beta book? And I said, I don't know, 50. I felt like that was reasonable and it would have made me happy, even though I spent literally months on it. And we sold 500 copies and I was just over the fucking moon. But imagine if I had said 1,000 and we only hit 500, I would have been miserable. And the facts of the situation wouldn't have changed at all. Just my expectations. We talked about this with the book size. This is the same thing. You don't like to be surprised. You don't like having your expectations not met. You are your own customer of your own life in this case. So what is all in common? It's all feelings. Feelings create self-sabotage. You should become an emotionalist robot. That's not what I'm saying. But the thing is, when you overly emphasize your feelings because you don't have real world, up close personal experience with the thing, feelings seem like all you've got. So it's natural to turn to them. But that produces failures. So what do you do about it? What do you do about it? Because we all have feelings, don't we? I know I do. Feelings can only tell us how we feel, not anything about reality. I feel cold right now. My feet feel really cold. It is 75 fucking degrees in here. My feet are wrong. Okay. Like feelings are feedback. They're not facts. A feeling cannot tell you what will work or what won't work, what you should do or not do. They give you hints, they give you guidance, they give you feedback, definitely not orders or any test of reality. So what do you do instead? Here's the thing that I promised in the sales copy would help you overcome the 3 pitfalls. And it's the same thing. It's one thing for all of the pitfalls. And it's called the OODA loop. I would love to know who here has already heard of the OODA loop. This is a simplified version, but I love this sketch diagram. So the OODA loop is observe, orient, decide, and act. And it starts at observe, which is why I drew that arrow there. It's actually a plan for handling military conflict actions. And so if you Google OODA loop, you'll see the full diagram, which says like take into account like local culture and experiences that they've already had with your military group that you're with, and like a bunch of other complicated things. It's really, really interesting. But this part can be used for everything. So when you feel a powerful feeling that is good or bad about your project that has a chance to derail you, either in a positive way or a negative way, it's time to observe, and then you orient, and then you decide, and then you act. So what does that look like? When you have your powerful feelings, you're going to be like, all right, this is the thing that I am feeling. I am feeling like my product will never work. And my impulse is to give the fuck up. No, don't do it. So you have to then go on to the next step. Don't stop there. That's where a lot of people stop. That's the natural impulse. So you're going to orient yourself to actual reality. What are the facts of the situation? Where am I in the process? What have I done? What is actually happening to make me feel this way, if anything? What does the data say that I gathered before I started this endeavor? And what do I want? Like, if you literally do not want to create the product you started to create because you hate it, that's okay. That's fine. But don't rage quit without interrogating it first. I started things that I decided I did not want to do, and I stopped them, and I feel good about that. But if it's an impulse that you don't think about first, you are going to just give up on everything that you try. So once you've got the facts, like what does the Safari data say? Do people buy products like this? Have people been enjoying my newsletters? People been reading my blog posts? Oh, they haven't been reading my blog posts? Why haven't they been reading my blog posts? Have I actually put my blog post anywhere for people to read? Like, is it accessible? Do people find it on one of the aggregators? I've been replying to people. Like, do they know I exist? Like you have to ask yourself, what are the material facts of the situation? What have you done? What have other people done? And then you decide, once you have that, you're like, all right, I feel this. Here are the actual facts about it. Given these things together, what should I do? If, for example, you've decided that you really hate the audience and do not want to work with them, that is valid. What do you want? The action you should take in that case is to consider whether you can reuse the product in some other way, or if perhaps there's a part of the audience that is bad and vocal and other parts that are great and silent. Like, you just have to figure out what you're going to do and make a decision. And then once you do make your decision, once you weigh the facts, and a lot of times the facts will be, it's fine. This is going as planned. This is a normal part of the process. I'm just feeling feelings because I've never done this before, or because something bad happened before. It's not relevant to what I'm doing now. It's just like an echo. Decide, you'll either affirmatively, intentionally quit something, knowing that you've investigated it, or keep going because you realize the feeling is not actually telling you something important. It's just a feeling. And so once you've decided what you're going to do about it, then of course you act. Make an explicit plan and then put it into action so that you replace impulse. And it's that easy. Millions of therapists around the world are screaming and then silenced.
I was just going to add that user skills that are also forever. So treating your tiny product as a lower stakes practice zone
Yeah.
is great, because like if you have to learn these things when the stakes are super high, the odds of you learning them in a productive and healthy manner are very, very low.
Yes. Very
Especially
true.
without the help of a therapist. I work with a business owner who, one of the things that we've worked through the most over the course of the business is not marketing strategy. It's a lot of expectation setting. And when things are going well and we show up at our monthly meeting and he's bummed out, the most common reason is because he invented an expectation and things didn't live up to it. And then when he shows up and he's super happy, it's because we met or exceeded expectations. And this is a like nearly decade old, very mature business. So these are problems that don't go away, is the point that I want to reinforce here. And taking tiny product lessons as an opportunity to practice them now will serve you effectively forever, and also in things that have nothing to do with your business.
Yes, these are just life skills that most people are not given a chance to exercise because if you follow the normal life path, the decisions are made for us. Or you're put in a situation where actually something happens to you, you feel about it, but you actually can't do anything about it. Like, what if you're fired? Like, you can't do anything about that. It's done, it's over with. But if you get an angry email from a customer, that's not what's happening. Like, the analog is you got fired, and so you get upset. But if you get an angry email from a customer, as a business owner, you're in a position to fix that. And so you like have to learn a completely different way of dealing with problems. Creating a business successfully is personal development. It just is. So here's a chance to become a great business owner as well as a better human being. So you will have many feelings as you move through all of these steps. And when you do, please try to apply the OODA loop. So when you feel that you do not have enough Safari data, you have to ask yourself, can I, within the bounds of what the roadmap says I need, and it says like 1 or 2 small pains that you can solve. Do you have enough data to create something that saves someone 3 hours of work? Yes. Then you have enough Safari data. No, well, then maybe you need a little more. Don't rely on your feelings because your gut has not been educated. In the future, your gut will be smarter, but this is how you make your gut smart. And remember, you will make mistakes, and that's fine. This is the time to do it because there are literally no stakes whatsoever. All you can lose is time, and that is frustrating, but you are going to learn so much. So it's very, very important to keep moving forward and keep returning to the path, no matter what you feel or what happens, because this is how you learn and grow. And this is how you will eventually be able to build a product empire if that's what you really want. And finally, all of the steps in the Launch for the Win framework are based on 30 by 500, which is our premier flagship, fancy. It took multiple years to make course 30 by 500. It answers pretty much all the questions that you might have about all of the steps, which is the exact opposite of a tiny product. And it's not for everybody, but if you are the kind of person who wants more guidance on every step, then you should consider seeing if 30 by 500 is right for you. So now we've made it. We've made it to the end. Let's do Q&A.
Well, good news. We've got a good crew still here. Been loving all the interaction in the chat between each other, questions being asked, people chanting OODA loop because it's so fun to say.
Oodles of OODA.
That feels like a tongue twister in the making. So stick around. I'm going to start with the questions. So the first question we talked about a little bit in the chat already. This was from Matt Green Rocks. When we're talking about the sort of life cycle of bringing people in, nurturing them over time, whether it's an email list or something along those lines. Matt basically asked, does Amy's advice imply that you maintain a relationship with the customers? And the reason they ask is because they published an app in the App Store, but have zero relationship with customers to further market to. So the answer that we talked about in the chat was, yes, it does. And when we say, App Store, Marketplace, even Amazon, a lot of these platforms give you the benefit of distribution, but you don't get the long-term benefit of the relationship with the customer. So I wanted to make sure we had a chance to talk about that on camera a little bit and some of the ways that app stores and marketplaces can be valuable and why they're probably not the best fit for a tiny product.
Yes. Okay. They are not a great fit for a tiny product because rather than having the chance to slowly build up a relationship with someone coming to your website to read your blog posts or watch your YouTube videos or following you on GitHub, TikTok, Facebook, is that you're competing against all the other products in the space, like directly, like right there. So say if you were into knitting and crochet and you make patterns, a lot of people have really good businesses selling patterns if they're, creative and good at making patterns, which is a real skill. They would sell their patterns on Etsy and Ravelry because those are the places that people look for those things, but they are not as hostile as the App Store, for example. Or like you might create a small course that you sell on Udemy. Some of our students have done that, especially students who are in countries where like the dollar goes a lot further, because when you're on Udemy, the standard price is much lower. Like the expectation on Udemy, for example, is cheap courses. And that may or may not work for you depending on your currency. But you might think, okay, well, I'm going to make the tiniest version and sell it here to save myself some work. but make sure to get their email addresses as part of the onboarding. And then you have a better version of the course that you can sell directly on your own site. Like we've even talked about using this as a way to promote some of our courses far in the future. Like we don't need to do it now, but it's something to think about. So like everything else, it's trade-off. Generally speaking, though, I would avoid those platforms and build your own platform in terms of like audience with an email list and e-bombs as we lay out and launch for the win.
The answer that I gave in the chat that builds on that is if you're going to use those platforms for the distribution, the short-term value, and you may be able to basically borrow their audience and generate some revenue, but as soon as the money's in, that's it. And
Yeah.
so if you're going to use it strategically in some of the ways that Amy mentioned, but in order for it to be really strategic, you've got to have a thing to send people back to. One of my favorite
Yes.
examples is the one we learned from Josh Kaufman years ago. I did this in the Tiny MBA as well, even though Tiny MBA is only distributed through our platforms today. Initially, I put the ebook on Amazon, and in all cases, there's a call to action where it encourages folks to email into a special email address for some more goodies, some relevant content upgrade, those sorts of things.
Yep.
And I don't know if we ever got like percentages from Josh, but the general sentiment that I got is it's anything is greater than zero, but it's not a very high conversion for a lot
Yeah.
of these audiences. So at the end of the day, I think these distribution channels, you have to recognize their value is their value and expect only that value from them, no more, no less. And
Yep.
part of that working is for you to have a place to send them back to. Because if you think about it from the book perspective or even the app store, to send them back to a website to join a newsletter, probably not a very, very strong sell. But sending them
No.
back to your website for an upgrade of some kind or something that's going to help them immediately today solve a
Mhm.
problem, that requires you to have that thing. And that thing is your
Yes.
tiny product in some ways. So once you've got a tiny product that you know people want and buy or download or sign up for reliably, then it makes sense to start looking at these bigger marketplaces and going, okay, how do I use that as an inbound source to
Yep.
just send more people to the thing that I want to get in more people's hands? But the thing
Yeah.
has to be there first.
I'm on several mailing lists for fiction authors because they offer a exclusive short story with some of the characters in the book that you just read at the end. So that works for me. But
Yep.
I still imagine that the conversion rate is pretty low.
All right, let's keep cruising. The next question I have is specifically about Sales Safari. We didn't talk a lot about Sales Safari in this session. So before we even jump into the question, do you want to define what Sales Safari is and how it works?
Yes. So Sales Safari is called Sales Safari because you go and you observe your audience in their natural habitat and learn from their natural behaviors for the purpose of like solving their problems and making products. Once you talk to someone with the goal of using what they tell you to create a product, it can fundamentally changes what they tell you and what they think about. It becomes very artificial. They're not going to think about a lot of the problems that they struggle with, even ones they complained about an hour before, because they're in like interview mode. It's different. So when you go on Sales Safari, you find your audience wherever they may be, forums, online groups of various types. You might find them in support forums for products that they use, reviews. I've been watching videos that are popular too with our audience and looking at the comments and reading what they say. Like first I'm noting what the video is about. And then I'm seeing how it resonates with people and what questions people say or objections they have below the videos. There's so many ways to find free data on what your potential audience wants, needs, and will buy. And want being that the things they actually consume or purchase, like habitually. Need is the problems that they have, the pains that they have, things they struggle with that block them. We talk about what pains are in the email course that goes with launch for the win. And then obviously things that they buy. You want to see their actual buying habits because a lot of people will talk a good game and then not actually spend money. So you want to see what they actually spend money on.
Great. So excellent setup for the question, which is, while I'm on Safari, I'm finding all kinds of threads on all kinds of topics. How am I supposed to find a pattern in this chaos? And the short version is we've spent a lot of time creating very specific steps inside of 30 by 100 that take you through identifying patterns at the keyword level, at the phrase level, at sort of the clusters of related problems and pains. I think a lot of folks, especially if you have not taken 30 by 100, think Safari is just going and reading the internet, which, to be fair, we thought that's all Safari was too. When we first started teaching this,
Yeah.
our instruction was go to forums and social media and read what people were talking about. People would say, it's either too chaotic or I'm not seeing anything. And I think the secret sauce to Safari is half the reading, but the other half is learning how to take useful notes. And I think how you extract patterns really comes down to you actually have to write it down. And I think we're so used to trusting our brains to absorb all that information. And our brains are the most incredible tool for that, for sure. But writing down the same thing you saw people say and realize you wrote it down a bunch of times. On
Yeah.
one hand, it could be the tally, the tick, the actual like numerical statistical counter. But the thing that's often missing is the meaning. Why are people saying this over and over and over? What does that suggest or imply? Or what is the thing that connects the dots between all of them? There's not really a statistical analysis. And again, why AI can't really do this for you, because the meaning is also infused with your understanding. We strongly encourage you to be working with audiences that you actually have an understanding of, because even if you, as a human with the most powerful computer in the world, your brain, don't have hands-on experience with that audience, you're going to make all kinds of incorrect, dumb, and off-base assumptions. That's not saying you're dumb. It's just like we find patterns wherever we want them to, and if we don't infuse them with actual experience, we inject experience and get things really, really wrong. And so, like, this is why automation and AI in this sphere are a great way to do the wrong thing faster, which is a great way to feel like you're moving faster, but actually be going backwards or worse.
That's absolutely true. And it even works non-verbally, which I think is really interesting. So if you, for example, follow home renovation type stuff or interior design type stuff, so often the content will be about kitchens. Like, so if you're not in 3500, you don't know this, but one of our examples is about painting your kitchen cabinets. And we picked that because it is not technical, so anyone can relate to it. And it's also really quite a rich vein there. But like if you, I don't know, go to Pinterest and search for renovation, I'm guessing that a significant chunk of them, if not a majority of renovation, but like reveals are going to be kitchens. Kitchens are like the most renovated room in the house. They're the ones that they say they sell houses, like real estate agents say kitchens sell houses, and people believe that. And people also spend a lot of time working in their kitchens and so get really mad at it. So the fact that you can look at things and see tons of things, tons of examples of this finished product lets you know that that is a pattern. Like that is something that everyone is thinking about.
This is very long-winded way of saying that I think pattern observation is a skill in and of itself, like
Yes,
anything else that we teach. And if you are passively reading stuff, you're not really practicing the skill.
that's
If
true.
you are actively reading and taking notes, then you are heading in the right direction. And most importantly, a piece of the process is regularly revisiting those notes. We have an entire like 6-page cheat sheet in our material that guides people through not just reviewing things once, but going back to them with the intention of looking for those connections and so on and so forth. I'm going to say that we move on to our next question. I think we got time for 2 more. I'm going to do a quick one and then a little bit more in depth. The quick one is from Joseph saying, what's the best way to approach re-engaging with a cold email list? I have a very small one, some people who have bought a course in the past, but it's been 2 years since emailing anyone on the list.
It's been 84 years.
This is a surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, common question or concern. And the easy answer is to email those people. Many of them won't have even realized that you vanished for 2 years. So A, email them. B, don't explain where you went, but absolutely do explain why you have their email address in the first place.
Yes.
One of the most frustrating experiences getting an email from something that I bought 2 years ago, and somebody writes a whole story about what's going on in their world and never, ever in the entire thing tells me what I bought. why I would care. So, I don't think there's anything fancy when it comes to warming up a cold list other than starting to send stuff and make a plan to be more consistent. But outside of that, spare them the excuses for why you haven't emailed in 2 years, and make sure you open up with the reason you're getting this email is because 2 years ago you bought XYZ course. Thanks for being a customer. Now let's get on to you and sending you something helpful.
Exactly. Absolutely. People don't care. They don't care. They're not like, oh my God, why did you not email me? You abandoned me. They don't care. But you should absolutely remind them who you are and why they're getting the email, because they will otherwise think it's spam. Like, I have literally gotten emails from something that I signed up for like 3 weeks ago and I couldn't remember what it was. And they didn't explain what the product was in the email. I was like, what is that? I have no idea. People are busy and we all have brain fog. So be
Exactly.
supportive.
So our last question of the day from Original Rhombus, which by the way is an excellent screen name. Yeah, top notch. I don't feel like I can serve my peers who are all very smart. How do I decide who to serve given that? Is there a good process for finding the people who I should be serving? The first thing that jumps out to me, and I always like to call this out given the context of this conversation, is I don't feel like. Right?
Exactly.
So it's possible that you can't serve those folks who are quote unquote smarter than you. But is that feeling perhaps stopping you from listening to the problems they do have and providing some perspective maybe that they've forgotten or missed or didn't have in the first place?
Yeah, I think the feeling is usually completely wrong. Also, you are not your customer. So forget what you know and think, oh, it's obvious. Everyone knows this. It's like, bitch, no, they don't. No, they do not. You would be shocked at what people do not know. Second, in 30 by 500, we teach that an audience does not necessarily have to be your peers. People can be people behind you or people lateral doing other stuff, but at your level, but not doing the stuff that you're doing. But literally, in no field is the information and understanding and knowledge equal among all the participants. In no field, that's not possible. People who are like trying to do your job for themselves, like people who are running their own business and need to handle whatever it is for themselves, people who want to be in the position where you are, people who've forgotten the basics. Like, come on, it's like a trope. I don't know if you're a developer, but in the development world, we all talk about how often we forget how to do shit and have to go look it up, right? Like, that's normal. Like, these are usually comes up in conversations to make newbies feel better. They're like, just know that I've been in the field 20 years and I still have to Google every time I want to do X because I don't remember the format. Like, it's a thing.
Yep.
We don't all know things. And also we forget, our heads are busy, and your perception of what other people know is guaranteed to be wrong.
And it's also possible to likely that whatever your experience, perspective, outlook, worldview, background, other things you've done that are unrelated or adjacent give you other stories, other examples. So like common knowledge can be framed in a way that people haven't heard before and be more useful than the previous 100 times they heard it. But you don't know that until you put it out there. And so I think a lot of this is, to a large degree, getting past that self-talk of what I have to say has been said 1,000 times before if it hasn't been said by you. If you're just regurgitating what somebody else said, then yes, you're right. But if you look at the thing and go, I have an experience or a story or an example, or like some of my favorite examples that I've learned things from are from adjacent industries where somebody is able to connect the dots on something that I wouldn't have connected them that way. And it just helps like glue or reinforce those ideas in my head or in other people's head.
Yeah, I think everyone here knows that they're not going to know how to do everything if they haven't done it before. That's why I wanted to talk about eating an egg with the shell on. There was no new information in that section of the talk that everyone really liked. You literally knew it already. You knew, one, you knew how to eat an egg, I hope. If not, you do now. Two, you also know, of course, it's unreasonable to expect myself to know how to do everything when I haven't done it yet. And yet you probably don't actually believe that, right? But also, guys, I got famous initially by creating Ruby on Rails cheat sheets, and there was no new information in my cheat sheets. Literally, I had a guy come up to me after my first Rails talk, which was I was so nervous at my talk that I like would it was bad, guys, it was bad. I had a guy come up to me afterwards and try to shove $60 in my hand because that's all he had on himself. He wanted to thank me by handing me cash. It was so nice, but also kind of weird. And I was like, "How about you buy us pizza instead?" I was like, "Great, worked out." But like, it was nothing new. It was nothing new in my talk, nothing new in my cheat sheets. I did it differently in a way that made sense for people who before struggled with it.
Well, we do have a couple of other questions which may spark some articles, some e-bombs of our own, some future content, some Twitter threads, whatever it might be. But other than that, I think we can call today a wrap, a success. Big thank you to everyone who participated today and for great questions and conversations in the chat. We'll be wrapping this up in a neat little bow. Anything else you
Yes.
want to share with the group, Amy?
Thank you for sticking with us. This was really fun. If you have any questions about the process, Launch for the Win, like we're interested in hearing your questions about Launch for the Win. And if you use Launch for the Win to create a product, send it to us. We want to see it. We want to hear about your experiences.
We want to do this event again in the future with all student examples. This time around, we pulled some of our own, some students, some outside world. It would be awesome if basically 100% of the examples that we showed in here were your tiny product. So if you can use that as some motivation to put Launch for the Win into action, then let us know when that tiny product is shipped because we want to include it in
Yes.
future versions of this.
Absolutely. All right. I think that's
All
everything.
right, let's wrap it up. Everybody have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and we will see you back on the email list.
Bye.